Let's have a look at what's happening with borders. We've seen so many stories of heartlessness with our state border closures around this country. Let's go to Queensland to pick up on the latest one. And I'm joined by Ros Bates, who's the Shadow Health spokesperson in the state of Queensland. Thanks for joining us, Ros. And I wonder if you can tell us first up about this latest case of someone, his name is David Johnson, a 32-year-old Queenslander who's had brain surgery, a brain tumour removed in Sydney, and yet he's not, even with a letter from his doctor, Dr. Charlie Teo, he's been not allowed to go and isolate at home where he can have the proper exercise and recovery equipment. He's stuck in a hotel.
Well, Chris, this is just another example of the Labor government and Annastacia Palaszczuk showing absolutely no compassion. I mean, this is a young father of two who had a brain tumour the size of an apricot taken out of his head. All he wanted to do was to convalesce at home. He had a letter from Dr. Charlie Teo, for God's sake. I mean, whose health advice would you take? Charlie Teo's or Annastacia Palaszczuk's? This is just another example of Annastacia Palaszczuk being cold, cruel and callous, with different rules for the rich and famous than there is for ordinary Queenslanders, and it's just got to stop. Queenslanders have had a gutful.
Look, it's just extraordinary. You know, you're talking about a sick man, a man who's trying to recuperate from very, very delicate surgery. Now, obviously, he tried to get exemptions before he came home. He didn't know he was going to be going into hotel quarantine until his plane landed. So what's been happening since then to try and take this up directly with the authorities and with the Premier to try and get some common sense here?
Well, again, Deb Frecklington, the Leader of the Opposition, has had to write again to Annastacia Palaszczuk and to Jeanette Young, the Chief Health Officer, to try and get exemptions for people like David. It is just not good enough. And, you know, worse than that, to add insult to injury, they told him that he couldn't convalesce at home because his family wouldn't follow the rules, that it was school holidays and that they'd go out and play mini golf or something like that. I mean, that is just absolutely disgusting. That family, that wife and those children want to make sure that their father and their husband have the best opportunity to recover from this brain tumour. They would follow the rules better than anybody. It's just insulting.
This is what does my head in, and that's why I wanted to show those mortality figures or survival rates, because people are treating this like it's the worst disease in the world, like it's Ebola. Now, there is no community infection in New South Wales at the moment anyway, so the chances of David Johnson taking coronavirus home to his family in isolation are absolutely minimal. You just couldn't put a number on them. Even if there was substantial levels of infection in New South Wales, of course it would be worth the risk of one man recovering from surgery going to his own home to recuperate in isolation.
Well, Chris, we get conflicting health advice all the time. Only on Thursday, we were told by the Chief Health Officer, the Leader of the Opposition and myself, that there is no way in hell that the borders between the ACT and Queensland were going to be open unless they had 28 days of no community transmission. Well, guess what happened? The next day they were open. You know, I welcome the announcement today that the border bubble has been enlarged, particularly down to places like Lismore, because those people who live in the Northern Rivers and in the Southern Gold Coast know that that border is fluid. You know, I've always said, I'm a nurse and I'm from the Southern Gold Coast. I know that patients and doctors, you know, work together across that area. So it's about time that was open, but we'll have to wait and see what the advice is for the rest of New South Wales. Yeah,
the Deputy Premier, Miles, is actually at odds with the federal government. He's saying that the federal government's trying to play politics over the coronavirus and the border issue. Can you explain what his argument is there?
Look, no one believes Stephen Miles and his tinfoil conspiracy theories. This health minister is a fraud, a phony and a failure. And if Annastacia Palaszczuk wasn't the weakest premier in Queensland's history, she would have sacked her embattled health minister previously. He is known as a Labor liar. We have seen him caught out in lies before. So nobody in Queensland takes any notice of the COVID weather boy, Stephen Miles.
But what's he saying here about ADF? He's saying he wants more ADF help to enforce a border that shouldn't be there. So he doesn't want to behave like Australia is a nation and you've got obligations to other Australians, but he wants other Australians to pay for ADF to enforce a border that shouldn't be there.
Well, you're right, Chris, and we're Australians first before we're Queenslanders. And, Stephen Miles is just playing politics with patients' lives, and Annastacia Palaszczuk is doing the same. Queenslanders have had enough of it.
Thanks very much for joining us, Ros. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Ros Bates there, who's the health spokesperson for the Queensland opposition. She says that Queenslanders are Australians first before Queenslanders. I know a few Queenslanders who would question that.